Welcome everybody to another Beyond Terrain mini lecture. We got a beautiful February day here today. It is about 15 degrees, which is absolutely stunning. The sun is out for a nice warm walk, which is always welcomed. It's been cold lately. So this is a nice change of pace. Today we're going to be talking about a really important topic, really central topic, inflammation. Now inflammation, often we think of it as a symptom. And it is a symptom. It is a result of a diseased environment. Diseased environment could be due to a toxicity, due to some sort of deficiency. Usually we categorize them within the two, but we can also think of something like stress. Even psychological stress can cause inflammation. So that's important to note. I think a really important note on inflammation is that in a diseased state, inflammation is not a bad thing. If you have a diseased environment, you want inflammation. Inflammation is not the problem, but it is an indication of a problem. Now, I really want to cover this little nuance here. You don't necessarily want inflammation, right? You only want inflammation if you are in a disease state, because inflammation is part of the healing process. So if you have a toxicity or some sort of injury, you need inflammation to be able to heal. But you obviously do not want a diseased state, and you do not want an injury or anything like that, or you don't want stress. So of course you don't want inflammation. You only want it in a diseased environment. So inflammation, obviously you don't want it if you're healthy, but if you have it, you're not in a healthy state. I think that's kind of obvious. So is inflammation good or bad? Well, of course, this is a moral judgment. And of course, it's no way to think about inflammation per se, but inflammation, when you have a diseased environment, is healthy, right? So a little bit of a paradox there. But that's the reality of the situation is your body is reacting properly if you have a diseased environment and you have inflammation. Okay, so just a couple of points there to start us off. So what is inflammation? Commonly we think of it as swelling, and of course that is a fairly decent representation of it from the visual aspect, from the empirical side of things. Now in this modern world, we always look at chemicals and isolate them out and try to understand from that level. So, from the more modern perspective, it's, the secretion of histamines, cytokines, prostaglandins, etc. And when cells secrete these, then the body goes into inflammation. That is what it's said. That's the mechanism that is proposed. And in the modern sense, that's kind of what's accepted, right? But of course, inflammation is more than that. It's also the body increasing blood flow, so there's a vasodilation going on. We increase the size of our circulatory system to allow for more blood to be passing through the area of disease, injury, toxicity, deficiency, essentially. And within this state, there's also increased permeability of the blood system, of the capillaries, of our circulatory system, right? So more things can actually get out of the blood and go to the site of disease once again. Now, again, in the modern sense of things, people will say that inflammation increases the immune cells present, which again, I'm not necessarily going to deny. If you want to learn more about the nonsense of the immune system and how it's a misnomer, you can go and watch this video that I will put up in the corner here. All to say that, of course, inflammation is sort of a primary healing mechanism of the body. It happens in any sort of infraction to the body, any sort of diseased environment. So it's obviously a very important thing that the body goes through. Now I'm going to be a little bit more clear on what causes inflammation. I think this cycles into the causes of disease. Typically we say that there are, I always say two major classes of disease. I break them down into toxicity and deficiency. Toxicities could include, excess stress, because obviously a certain amount of stress is natural and thus healthy. This could include excess artificial substances. Anything that is artificial causes disease in any quantity. Anything in excess that is natural also causes disease. So if you have too much water or too much snake venom in your system, these are toxicities. But anything that is artificial in any quantity will cause disease. Another point is heavy metals. A certain amount of heavy metals in your blood system is natural. We are designed to deal with this in natural quantities, but having an excess of these natural substances does cause disease. Also in this category, I mentioned psychological stress. That's sort of a little bit different to understand, but excess environments, excess experiences in certain ways. This sort of goes into a little bit of a different topic, but let's just put psychological stress in this category. And obviously, injury kind of falls into this category. Falling and breaking your leg is sort of some sort of toxicity. You're sort of in this toxic state, this excess state of force, causing your bones to break, cuts, things like that. I all categorize this under toxicity. The other category is deficiencies, and this could be deficiencies in love, sleep, nature, sunlight, real whole foods, movement, the list goes on. So deficiencies are always deficiencies in natural substances, of course. So if you are lacking what the natural human experience has, you will be deficient in some way. Now, nutritional deficiencies becomes a more difficult topic, but if you would like to go listen to the first podcast we did with Mr. Daniel Roitas on vitamin deficiencies, in which we covered other sorts of deficiencies as well. It gives a really good understanding kind of what we're talking about when we talk about deficiencies. But one of the key takeaway messages of that was that these deficiencies tend to manifest in toxicities. So that can be a good way to sort of understand how deficiency plays out in the body. And if you want to think of it biochemically, it makes a lot of sense as well. Obviously, if there's a deficiency in some sort of biochemical, think of the basic chemical equilibrium equation. And, if there is insufficient reactants, there will be, a buildup of one class of reactants if there's a deficiency in the other. And there will also be a deficiency in the products, or there may be an imbalance in the products. And this may cause more toxicities down the line and also upstream, because things kind of get compressed on either end of that. So that's if you like the whole biochemical way of explaining our biological systems, which is questionable, and we'll be talking about that more in the future. So we can classify inflammation in sort of two categories in and of itself as a symptom. We can think of inflammation as being chronic. We can think of inflammation as being acute. Let's think of a quick example that really highlights the acute stages of inflammation really well. This includes the broken finger example. You break your finger, it swells up, it gets inflamed, as they would say. This inflammation obviously is responding to the broken finger, the toxic environment, if you will. And obviously the inflammation did not cause the broken finger. The inflammation is the result, it is the symptom, it is the manifestation of an environment, and it is the healing process. You could think of that on a toxicity level. If you ingest some sort of toxicity, there will be inflammation wherever that toxicity ends up in your body. If it's in your gut will become inflamed. That is always the first line of healing. So that's kind of important. If the toxicity ends up in anywhere else in your body, say you receive an injection of sorts, a cupcake, if you will, obviously there will be inflammation at the site. That also gets spread through our body, so could explain out some reasons why we see sort of inflammation in the whole body, even in acute phases. Like think sepsis, why there would be whole bodily inflammation in an acute phase, because toxicity can spread very quickly in a body. There is obviously chronic inflammation as the other class, and this kind of falls into the category of what we view as chronic illnesses. This also would include things like autoimmune, which is a total misnomer, totally incorrect way of thinking about things. Other examples of chronic illnesses, You know, the list is pretty extensive here. We could go osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, heart conditions, you know, diabetes, cancer. The list really goes on and on here. Look at the waterfall. It's all covered up. That's pretty nice. Pretty cool. I've never seen it fully covered like that. That's kind of interesting. So obviously in the chronic phase, we're talking about something categorically different than the acute phase. I think the acute phase is pretty clear. The chronic phase becomes a little more nuanced, and so it becomes a little less clear. Also, the development of chronic versus acute, how does that happen? Again, I think it's easily understood using inflammation, which we'll discuss here shortly. So we'll go over that in a moment. But you know, the reality of the situation is that within the chronic phases, what we're looking at is deeply stored toxicity. We're looking at sort of a body that's certainly not failing, because the body needs to respond in this way. It must respond in this way to be healing. It's still healing itself, but it's sort of stuck in these healing phases, right? It's almost like the bucket is too full. There's too many toxins. There's not enough nourishment to properly deal with these things, for the body to function properly, things like that. You can think of it like that, right? So we're really looking at sort of late stage diseases here. Now, does that mean that something like autoimmune is a chronic condition? You know, that's sort of a nuanced topic, right? Because I do believe that acute toxicity can be a huge causal factor, at least, for autoimmune conditions. Obviously, they're not genetic. Obviously, they're not random. So that's very important to understand. And maybe we'll save this discussion for another time. So a big question comes up: can inflammation kill you? Can a cytokine storm kill you? You know, this is sort of a similar question to can bacteria kill you, right? It may seem as though inflammation can kill you. It may seem as though bacteria can kill you. When people who have these things die, we tend to, you know, use the easy cop out and just say, yeah, you know, the bacteria or the inflammation did it. It got them. It killed them. The reality of the situation is that we know that these are symptoms. We know that there are results. It is the underlying toxicity that's the true cause. And so, you know, misattributing the cause of death to inflammation, to a symptom, to a bacteria, fungus, parasite, whatever, we know that these are all downstream from the root cause. Upstream, of course, is some sort of diseased environment, toxicity, or deficiency, or likely a combination of both. So another sort of important thing to discuss here is the idea of hormetic stress, I guess, for lack of a better term. This encompasses some sort of healing practice as well. This incorporates even movement, you know, so when you go to the gym and you work out and you work your muscles out, you're training, this actually does cause some sort of inflammation. That's how muscles rejuvenate. That's how they heal and grow and become bigger. So there's obviously some sort of hormetic stress in there. Things like acupuncture, right, or dry needling. The reason that these have beneficial effects is because you're probably introducing a little bit of inflammation to the body, which is spiking the healing response. Is this a good way to go about healing? Introducing a little bit of inflammation, right? A little bit of the disease. It's not insane in my mind. It's not insane. Does it seem counterintuitive when you put it in this light? A little bit. A little bit. And this might dissuade some people, and it might even dissuade myself here in this conversation, but you know, should you introduce a little bit of this toxicity? I think from a hermetic standpoint, you're probably fine. You're also dealing with, I think we could probably, you know, categorize this in a slightly different lens. It's nothing that the body can't deal with. Things like a cupping maybe would probably introduce a lot of inflammation. Obviously, it sort of mimics inflammations when you think of like a traditional fire cupping. You know, the permeability is being increased. There's increased blood flow to the area. Maybe you are able to actually shed and detox some of the diseased blood. You know, the reality of the situation too is that modern diseases call for modern technologies. Were these necessary when we were living in an ancestral lifestyle? I would say absolutely not. Once we moved into civilization, it became different. Things became different. And I think that's important to note. So are the use of these, you know, interventions crazy? I wouldn't say so in the modern world, depending on how you're living your lifestyle. If you're trying to mimic a, you know, primitive environment and mindset, I would say, yeah, you're probably better off just, keep on keeping on. You don't need to necessarily worry about these interventions. If you're living, some sort of balanced lifestyle of modern and, primitive, you're trying to find this balance between the two, maybe some of these modalities might be helpful. Again, I think it's most important to just experiment on yourself, right? It's like, if it makes you feel really good and you feel like you're getting long-lasting results, and you don't have any indications of disease or that these interventions are causing any sort of symptoms or any harm to you whatsoever, and try to be very objective, of course, and even look at the very subtle symptoms, even like getting frequent headaches or being stressed or stuff like that, right? So it's very important to be objective when you look at yourself, but always run the experiment on yourself to see if these are right for you. It's a case-by-case thing, right? And if you are in a disease state, probably some of these interventions that are introducing this inflammation aren't going to be harmful. And I would say this is the reason why these interventions are better than the modern interventions, is because they're actually introducing in some sort of way, that environment that is conducive to healing. It's introducing the symptom. Like maybe the reason that hot baths or saunas are helpful is because they're introducing that inflammation, they're introducing that heat, that increased permeability, they're increased that blood flow. Maybe that's the reason why these are beneficial, in balance, of course, right? So the modern approach, however, focuses on symptom suppression. The modern approach thinks the symptoms are the disease. At least they might not outright say that, but they certainly treat the symptoms as disease. They look at the disease and they say that the symptoms are the disease. They don't necessarily look at it as the healing process. This is evident, of course, by, us trying to reduce symptoms constantly, no matter what it takes. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are the best example of this. Advils, ibuprofen. This is what we do in any illness, right? You give anti-inflammatory drugs. Even if you break your finger, we give you anti-inflammatory drugs. We break that inflammation, right? We stop the body, we stop the fever, we stop the symptom. So that's really important to note. Why do we do that? Because it's comfortable. You remove the symptom, you think you remove the disease, but that is just not the case. If you remove the symptom, you're removing the healing process. The diseased environment will be further embedded into the body. The toxicity will remain, the deficiency will remain unaddressed, but we'll talk about that more in 1 second. So the mechanism of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, they block these COX-1, COX-2 biochemical pathways in the body. This reduces the production of prostaglandins, which reduces inflammation. We also have a different category of reducing inflammation. This is not going to be comprehensive at all, but steroids are another big category. So that's kind of categorically different than the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Steroids do work on the inflammation response as well. They do block the immune cells from producing cytokines. So they do stop that inflammation from the immune cell standpoint. Immune, of course, is a misnomer. Go check that immune system video out. It's my most recent solo video. So through symptom suppression, what happens? We can think of this very simply through the homotoxicology chart. Lays it out very well. I'll put it over the screen right now so you can have a look at it. You can pause the video. I really suggest kind of looking through this chart. It's a really good one. It really allows you to understand why chronic diseases occur, how they progress, really helpful to understand symptoms and how the symptoms can develop as well. Now it's important to note that this is not an allopathic chart. This is not to be used as a linear, algorithmic, pure human logic way of looking at it. It doesn't just develop in a straight line. Sometimes it can bounce around. The body is very dynamic. The body can move toxicity around to try and get it up and out. It needs to remove toxicity and it needs to nourish itself when it is deficient, right? It needs this stuff. Now, the deficiencies might be addressed more on the psychological level, from a mental level, right? Trying to tell yourself that you need to go outside or, stuff like that, but that's besides the point. The development of disease really occurs because of symptom suppression. What happens? You have inflammation that's responding to a toxicity in your body, let's say the gut. the gut is inflamed, there's a growth of bacteria and fungus and parasites that are all there to try to bioremediate the environment, to heal the environment that the toxicity is in. What we do is we kill the bacteria, we use antibiotics, we kill the fungus, we kill the parasites, we do parasite cleanses, we reduce the inflammation, we use Tylenol or anti-inflammatory or whatever. We're removing the healing properties of the body. What happens to that toxicity in your gut? Doesn't go away. Sticks around. Now, does it stay there forever, or is the body intelligent enough to think, okay, well that didn't work, let's try something else? Or that didn't work, we need to put this in a more stable position, because if it stays in the gut, it's going to really do some damage. So we need to move it. And that's a really important point. The body might move it to a different part of your body to try to get it up and out. This can cause different category of symptoms. The body might just store it further, right? So it might just try to push it down deeper into the tissues, as if to say, we don't want to deal with this. It may also create this mucoid plaque where the bacteria and the fungus and all this stuff can hide from the so-called immune system. Again, it's just further symptom suppression. It's further embedment of the toxic environment. This obviously over time results in the development of chronic illnesses. Over the acute phase, you can see how the acute phase can lead into chronic if we are constantly suppressing the symptoms of the acute phase, or at least not allowing the body to manifest what it needed to do, right? So sure, fevers are uncomfortable. You want to take anti-inflammatories, Tylenols, whatever. You want to suppress the symptoms to be a little bit more comfortable. Sure, fine. Do your thing. Everybody can make up their own minds about this, of course. But at the very least, you should be doing hot baths afterwards. The body wanted a fever. You need to give the body what it wants. You need to support the body in its healing processes. You cannot just allow that disease and toxic environment to manifest. You need to be eating the raw fats and the raw foods to be able to detox properly. You need to listen to the body. So essentially that is what healing is. The symptoms are the healing processes. You want to heal, you need to support the healing systems. Do not cut them off. If you are going to cut them off, make sure you introduce something that's going to at least mimic it. It might not be the best line of healing, but at the end of the day, you need to, if you're not going to allow nature to manifest, you at least need to mimic it, which might not be the best option. So really think about allowing your body to manifest as needed when it needs it. Listen to our bodies. Our bodies are so very intelligent. Again, this is not to say that if you are in sepsis, you should just let it flow, or if you're having a heart attack, you should just wait it out. Obviously, late stages of diseases, these modern diseases, which they are modern diseases, they did not occur a very long time ago. Even a short time ago, many of these diseases didn't occur. Sometimes emergency medicine is fine, but you need to listen to the body. You need to ensure that you're allowing the body to detox, and you need to nourish the body with what it needs. It needs whole foods, it needs nature, it needs sunlight, it needs time and with loved ones, etc., etc. So really, we want to support our systems. We do not want to cut them off. If that's sort of the main message, it goes for all symptoms. Symptoms are uncomfortable. That's where we grow. That's where we heal. In discomfort, as above, so below. And that's pretty much all I got for today. Inflammation isn't the bad guy. It isn't the root cause, right? It's an indication of disease. It is not the disease itself. Anybody that says the cause of this is inflammation, the cause of heart disease is inflammation, something caused the inflammation. No disease is random. Remember that. And yeah, that's all I got, guys. So thanks for checking out the video. I know there's a lot of new faces around here. Appreciate you guys all for checking out the channel. Make sure to like, share the video with a friend, family member. Give us a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. I love to chat with you guys. If you guys have video ideas, topics that you want me to cover, anything that I might have missed, make sure you leave it down below. And so that's all good. And always like, subscribe, do all that good stuff that I love asking for. But really, that's all I got. So thanks for checking it out, and take care.